Chapter 1236. There was no doubt that the cost of maintaining the underground tomb of Nasaric was unimaginably important to the entire underground tomb of Nasaric. Ever since the underground tomb of Nasaric had officially become operational, Yair Bade and Demiurgos had been experimenting with the idea of finding out if the other gold coins could be used in addition to Yggdrasil. If they could be used, it would have a huge impact on the underground tomb of Nasaric. For the sake of the cost of summoning the high-level non-automatic rebirth monsters in the underground tomb of Nasaric, as well as the cost of activating the magic use in the base, as well as the cost of resurrecting NPCs when they died, and so on, once it was confirmed that the other gold coins could be used, the underground tomb of Nasaric would be able to develop rapidly while ensuring that they would be able to get enough money. After all, just by investing a large amount of money to summon a batch of high-level monsters, they would be able to increase the power and strength of the underground tomb of Nasaric at an extremely high efficiency. Although they still had to consider the various expenses that the underground tomb of Nasaric would need in the future, it was still better than not developing at all. If they couldn't use gold coins other than Yggdrasil to maintain the underground tomb of Nasaric, their future development would be greatly limited. Hence, this question was definitely the most important of all the matters in the underground tomb of Nasaric. Before Noah listened to such an important matter, he first called out to Satya. What did that mean? It meant that Satya's matter was more worthy of Noah's attention than such an important question. Initially, Satya thought that Noah was going to question her about her betrayal. However, Noah first asked about Satya's physical condition. Didn't that mean that in Noah's heart, Satya's safety was more important than the development of the underground tomb of Nasaric? However, Satya thought that Noah was going to question her. For the benevolent and merciful Supreme Overlord, how disrespectful and impolite was this? Wasn't it simply gauging the stature of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain? Lord Noah. Satya, who was full of guilt, could no longer bear it. She knelt on one knee and cried out in grief. Undoubtedly, as a guardian, I have committed such a stupid and serious crime. Please give me the harshest punishment. There was even a trace of pain in Satya's voice. However, Yair Bade and Demiurgos could understand Satya's feelings very well. As long as it was an NPC in the underground tomb of Nasaric, they would be able to understand her feelings. Right? She had the purest of loyalty, but she had done something that she would never be willing to do. Even if she was controlled, it would be unforgivable to the NPCs in the underground tomb of Nasaric. If it's possible, I hope that I can atone for my sins with death. No, please give me a punishment that even death cannot compare to. Satya's voice sounded like a sob. Otherwise, I really can't forgive myself. Satya's Yair Bade and Demiurgos kept their mouths shut. Noah looked at Satya, who was holding back her tears with a guilty expression, and sighed deeply. Satya, regarding your mind control, I am also in the wrong as the one who gave you the order. It can be said that I am the one who indirectly caused you to be controlled, so I really don't want to punish you. Furthermore, you didn't have a choice. I know that the benevolent and merciful Lord Noah will definitely forgive my stupidity. Satya hurriedly said. However, that was my fault for not being able to complete the mission given to me by the Supreme Sovereign and being controlled by the enemy. Lord Noah is definitely not wrong. Yair Bade and Demiurgos inwardly nodded. Although Satya had acted because of Noah's orders, not only did she not complete the mission, but she also ended up being controlled by the enemy. That was because Satya was incompetent. No matter how they thought about it, it should not be Noah's fault. That was what Yair Bade and Demiurgos were thinking. Of course, Noah definitely did not have the same thoughts. However, looking at the sorrowful Satya, Noah was also struggling in his heart. It was just like what Yair Bade and the others said. Even if Noah thought that he was also in the wrong, Satya would definitely put all the blame on herself. If this sense of guilt was not properly relieved, it would definitely become an irremovable thorn in Satya's heart, right? Sometimes, being too loyal was not always a good thing. Noah immediately stood up from the black leather chair. Under Satya's stunned expression, he directly walked in front of her and knelt down on one knee like her. Lord Noah. Yair and Demiurgos were shocked. Satya shuddered and almost fainted. Now, the supreme ruler of the Nasaric underground tomb, the person whom everyone here was willing to sacrifice everything to be loyal to, was actually kneeling in front of a subordinate. If it weren't for the fact that there were only a few people here, perhaps the entire Nasaric underground tomb would have panicked. In this regard, Noah didn't care at all. He maintained the same height as Satya, looked into her eyes, and said very seriously, Shadya, you know that you definitely feel a strong sense of guilt for what happened this time, but I feel the same way about it. After saying this, Noah extended his hand and gently stroked the head of the trembling Satya, who was almost scared out of her wits, as he spoke in a gentle voice. Even if you say that it's not my fault, there is no doubt that if I hadn't underestimated the people from the Si Lien cult nation and thought that you could easily take them down with your strength, which was why I casually gave the order and didn't consider the consequences carefully, you definitely wouldn't have been controlled. So, just like you, my fault can't be covered up. Noah shook his head gently. I know that you definitely won't accept my words, but at least let me apologize to you. I'm sorry, Satya. Sir Noah. Satya stared at Noah absent-mindedly. If you must punish me, then for your sake, I can do as you wish. Noah met Satya's gaze. But you have to remember that you're not allowed to mention anything about using death as an apology in the future. You once swore to me that you would give everything you have to me. You also said that your lives were all mine. Then, you carried all of my belongings with you, but when you made a mistake, you used my belongings to apologize. That's not right, is it? Noah's gaze swept across Yair, Demiurgos, and Zaisha as he spoke. So, all of you remember that your lives are mine. Without my permission, you're not allowed to lose them. Do you hear me? These words turned into a surge of heat that surged in the hearts of Yair, Satya, and Demiurgos. Without any hesitation, Yair and Demiurgos knelt on one knee at the same time. Together with Satya, who had her head lowered, they let out a voice that seemed to burst out from the depths of their souls. Yes, sir. Noah smiled faintly and stood up. He bent down and lifted Satya's chin, a slightly malicious smile on his face. As for Satya, your punishment will be left for tonight. Night. Tonight? Satya was startled at first. Then, she seemed to have thought of something and widened her eyes in ecstasy. Could it be, what is it? Noah said as if he was tempting a child. Come to my room tonight and you'll understand. Yes. Satya's voice was louder than before, and everyone could sense the joy in it. However, at this moment, the temperature in the room suddenly dropped. Night. Room. Night. Room. Punishment. Punishment. Punishment in the room at night. Yair lowered his head, and a smile appeared on his face as if he had broken it. That scene was enough to scare an ordinary person to death. Chapter 1237. After a while, Satya happily left Noah's office with a completely different mood from when she first arrived. Thus, only Noah, Yair, and Demiurgos were left in the entire office. However, the three of them were in completely different moods. Noah was as relaxed as if he had solved an important matter, and sat back down on the black leather chair. Yair was brimming with resentment. He looked at Noah like a resentful woman who had been left out of her room. His eyes were filled with resentment. Demiurgos, on the other hand, was still touched by Noah's words just now, and he cast a look of respect and longing at Noah. Noah, who had already expected Yair obvious resentment, ignored it, and acted as if nothing had happened. He spoke to Yair, Abed and Demiurgos. Well, Siataya's matter has been resolved. Tell me what you plan to report. Yes. Demiurgos lowered his head and replied. Then, he hurriedly nudged Yair Bade and gave him a look. Yair Bade pursed his lips and looked extremely unwilling, but he also knew that now was not the time to be jealous and envious. He could only stand up reluctantly. Sir Noah. Yair Bade adjusted his mood, and his beautiful face regained its calmness. Like I said just now, we have already come to a conclusion about the cost of maintaining the big underground tomb in Nasarek. Is that so? Noah leaned forward a little and asked seriously. So, what's the result? The result is very gratifying. Yair Bade shared the good news. Whether it's the gold coins in Yggdrasil, the gold coins from this world brought back from the surface, or even the gold coins given by Sir Noah, they can all be used to maintain the big underground tomb in Nasarek. Hearing this, Noah's eyes suddenly lit up. This was indeed an extremely good piece of news. If the gold coins of this world could really be used to maintain the big underground tomb in Nasarek, then there would be no need to deliberately save the gold coins in Yggdrasil in the treasure hall of Nasarek's underground tomb. They could develop without worry. In particular, the news that the gold coins given by Noah could also be used was even better. With a treasure house that could produce unlimited gold coins, there would be no need to worry about the cost of maintaining the big underground tomb in Nasarek in the future. At this moment, Demiurgos said. However, we found that the 3 different types of gold coins used to maintain the big underground tomb in Nasarek have completely different degrees of consumption. Completely different degrees of consumption? Noah asked in confusion. What's going on? This is the final confirmation after many experiments, Yair Bade replied. We found that the different types of gold coins used to maintain the big underground tomb in Nasarek have different degrees of consumption. For example, if we use 3 different types of gold coins to summon the same type of monster, the degree of consumption is completely different. Demiurgos presented a prepared report. Sir Noah can take a look at the details. Noah did not hesitate and directly took the report from Demiurgos and began to read it. After a while, Noah understood what was going on. Simply put, the 3 types of gold coins used to do the same thing were completely different degrees of consumption. For example, if he used the gold coins in Yggdrasil to summon a level 70 monster, he would need to spend 100,000 gold coins. However, if he used the gold coins of this world to summon a monster of the same level, type, and race, he would need to spend 200,000 gold coins. If he used the gold coins that Noah took out from the gate of Babylon, he would only need to spend 10,000 gold coins to summon the same monster. Other than the summoning of the monster, the rest of the costs showed the same result. In other words, for the big underground tomb in Nasarek, the value of the gold coins that Noah took out from the gate of Babylon was 10 times greater than the value of the gold coins in Yggdrasil. The gold coins in Yggdrasil were twice as valuable as the gold coins in this world. Naturally, under such circumstances, the expenditure of the 3 types of gold coins for the same purpose would naturally be different. After this experiment, we are sure of one thing. Yair Bade smiled slightly. That is, the problem of the maintenance cost of the big underground tomb in Nasarek can be used as long as it is gold coins. And the amount of money consumed is completely dependent on the gold content, Demiurgos said. Among the 3 types of gold coins, the gold coins that Lord Noah gave us have the highest gold content, so the consumption time is also the least. The gold coins in Yggdrasil have the second highest gold content, which is only 1/10 of the value of the gold coins that Lord Noah gave us. As for the gold coins in this world, they have the least gold content. Compared to the gold coins in Yggdrasil, their value is only half, Yair Bade continued. Therefore, we are sure that the difference in cost is determined by the gold content. As long as it is gold coins, no matter where they come from, they can be used. So that's how it is. Noah came to a realization and smiled. In that case, we don't have to spend so much effort to earn money on the surface anymore, right? No, the money in this world still has its value. Demiurgos shook his head. According to the information we have, in this world, different human countries use different gold coins. It is generally difficult to use the gold coins of other countries in another country. Presumably, apart from the gold coins of this world, it will be slightly troublesome to use the two types of gold coins we have in this world. And when the people in the big underground tomb in Nasariq make items, they need to consume materials. These will need to be obtained from this world in the future. Yair Bade nodded. If we have the gold coins of this world, then we can buy a large amount of materials from this world to make all kinds of items. That's true. Noah also nodded. This can indeed avoid a lot of trouble. In addition, we also found a coin box in Nasariq, Demiurgos said with a smile. That is a tool used to exchange gold coins in Yggdrasil. As long as you put an item in, the coin box will be able to appraise the value of the item and exchange it for gold coins in Yggdrasil of the same value. What? Noah suddenly smiled helplessly. So there is a way to obtain gold coins in Yggdrasil. Then wouldn't my efforts be in vain? You can't say that, Yair Bade quickly said. After all, compared to gold coins, all kinds of items and magical tools are undoubtedly more useful. It would be a waste to put them in the coin box. Moreover, the value of the items appraised by the coin box will definitely be lower than the original value of the item. Even if you let someone with a merchant profession operate it, it will still be much lower than the original value. Demiurgos agreed. So, as for the coin exchange box, it's better not to use it unless it's absolutely necessary. Noah nodded in understanding. Regardless of the value, compared to gold coins, Noah naturally hoped to obtain magical tools with all kinds of wonderful uses. If he ran out of gold coins, he could think of other ways to obtain them. However, if he ran out of precious magical tools, it would definitely be much harder to obtain them than gold coins. Moreover, compared to carrying money with him, magical tools that could be used at critical times were undoubtedly much more precious. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Noah would not exchange his precious items for gold coins. Thus, Noah stood up. All of you, come with me to the library. Yair Bade and Demiurgos both nodded. Chapter 1238. On the 10th floor of the underground tomb of Nasariq, there was a huge library. It was a dark brown library. The atmosphere and the air was very calm, and there was a gentle magical light that illuminated every corner of the library. The high ceiling was circular. There was a huge door outside. The size of the door was comparable to the door of the throne room. On both sides of the door, there was a gorm that was more than 3 meters tall. The gorms had the appearance of a warrior, and their bodies flickered with a luster that normal stones or metals could not have. It was obvious that they were made from extremely rare materials. Although they were inanimate objects and their auras could not be sensed, the solemn atmosphere around the two gorms told others that they were definitely much stronger than normal gorms. With Noah in the lead, Yair Bade and Demiurgos on his left and right like bodyguards, the three of them arrived in front of the huge door guarded by the gorms. If it was anyone else in the underground tomb of Nasariq, they would have knelt down upon seeing Noah. However, the gorms did not have intelligence, nor were they living creatures. They were just weapons, so they naturally did not have such knowledge. Thus, Yair Bade and Demiurgos could not reprimand the two gorms for being rude, and Yair Bade spoke loudly. Open the door. Reacting to Yair Bade's words, the gorms standing on both sides of the door suddenly moved. Like stone giants and robots, the two gorms clumsily moved to the side and slowly pushed open the huge door. In the next moment, a space that was more like an art gallery than a library appeared in front of Noah's eyes. It was a space with all kinds of huge bookshelves. The walls, floor, and even the bookshelves were decorated with countless decorations. There was not even a speck of dust on the bright and clean floor, and beautiful patterns were drawn on it. There was also a huge wood mural on the ceiling. From here, one could see the second floor on both sides. After all, above the wall, there was a stand that protruded outwards. There were also rooms with entrances, and bookshelves were placed in the rooms. It looked like a heavenly kingdom of books. A few glass display cabinets with extremely precious books that were obviously different from ordinary books also entered Noah's eyes. A tranquil atmosphere filled the air. Noah, Yerbade, and Demiurgos walked into the library together. The door behind them was slowly closed by the two Gorams. Right now, Noah, Yerbade, and Demiurgos were in a place called the Realm of Reason. The huge library that existed in the 10th floor of the Great Tomb of Nasaric was divided into 3 sections: the space of knowledge, the space of reason, and the space of magic. Noah looked around and exclaimed as he walked along the aisles separated by bookshelves. Is this the library on the 10th floor of the Nasaric catacombs? In fact, Noah already knew about the existence of this library. That was because some of the books stored in this library were extremely precious to the Great Tomb of Nasaric. The books here could be divided into 5 types. The first type was the summoning book used to summon monsters. The summoning of high-level magical creatures that were not automatically reborn required a summoning ritual and a corresponding amount of money before it could be carried out. The item required for the summoning ritual was the summoning book. If one did not use the summoning book but used summoning magic to summon monsters, then the monsters that were summoned were the most common and low-level monsters. The monsters that were summoned using the summoning book were not only very rare, but their levels were also much higher than ordinary monsters. Even their magic, skills, and races were very rare. The second type was the item book used to store magical props. Some special and precious magical props with very powerful effects and functions were stored in these item books. The third type was the magic book used to use them. In Yggdrasil, sometimes, if one wanted to change into a specific profession or race, they would need the corresponding items. Among them, there were many items in the form of books. For example, the Book of the Dead that could transform people into undead, the Seed of the Fallen that could transform people into demons, and the Wings of Ascension that could transform people into angels, and so on. Using these items could allow one to change into a specific profession or even race. In Yggdrasil, such items had different values depending on the race and class of the player. The magic book stored here was the kind of item that could be used to change one's profession or race to an extremely precious profession. The fourth type was the information book used to create equipment, items, and items. The creation of some precious equipment, items, and items could not be done by just anyone. It was like a blueprint. The creation of precious equipment, items, and items required these information books in addition to materials. With these information books, as long as one had the required forging skills and materials, one could create the items recorded in them. As for the fifth type, they were novels. Most of them were classic novels that were widely circulated in the original world, or novels with the background of the game as the story. There were even original novels written by players in Yggdrasil, as well as second novels and game guides. Noah's goal on this trip was the first 4 types of books. The summoning books and information books were intended to be given to Yerbade and Demiurgos for their use. They would be used to summon monsters and create items, thus expanding the power and influence of Nazaric's underground tomb. The item books and magic books had wonderful uses. Naturally, Noah wanted to collect them. While expanding the treasury, he also wanted to prepare for an emergency. Of course, most of the summoning books and information books here had backups. Noah also planned to collect those books. Perhaps, in other worlds, if he needed manpower or specific items, Noah could make preparations with these summoning books and information books. It's just that there are so many books here, Noah exclaimed. Apart from the novels and guides, the summoning books, item books, magic books, and information books are all very useful and precious. There are so many of them here. The main ones are the novels and guides. Compared to the novels and guides, the other 4 types of books don't even add up to 1% of the total, right? Bade said in an admiring tone. Even so, the number of summoning books, item books, magic books, and information books here is quite shocking. To be able to collect so many precious items, as expected of the supremes of the past. Demiurgos nodded in agreement. He then turned his head and looked at Noah. Lord Noah, since you're here, would you like to see the scribe of the library? The scribe of the library. Noah nodded as he recalled the information about this NPC. That's fine. I also want to see how far the production of scrolls has progressed. After saying this, Noah walked forward. After an unknown amount of time, an inner door appeared in front of Noah. Bade and Demiurgos immediately went forward and opened the door. Immediately, a spacious room with huge bookshelves appeared in front of Noah's eyes. Upon closer inspection, the bookshelves were not filled with books, but with all kinds of miscellaneous items. There were ores, metals, gems, powders, and organs of unknown creatures on the bookshelves. These things were all materials needed to make scrolls. In addition, there was a large amount of parchment, either rolled up on the bookshelves or bundled up on the ground. They filled the entire room. In the center of the room was a large stone platform. On the side of the platform stood a skeleton. It was a skeleton that was a mixture of human and animal bones. It was only about 150 centimeters tall, had 2 horns on its head, 4 fingers, and hoof-shaped toes. It wore a long robe, had a turban on its head, and had pieces of cloth wrapped around its waist. Chapter 1239. Noah discovered that the skeleton standing at the edge of the stone platform not only had a strange appearance, but it was also wearing a lot of extraordinary equipment. A silver bracelet with 7 gems was worn on his wrist. On its neck was a golden amulet. On its fingers were rings of various shapes and colors. Its waist was also adorned with gem-like accessories, and there were also many scrolls tied to it. These equipment were all very powerful magic tools. Since it was able to wear so many magic tools, this seemingly extraordinary skeleton was naturally not an ordinary undying. Its name was Dietorius Anus Shectus. He was in charge of guarding this library and was given the position of scribe. He was an NPC who specialized in crafting professions. In terms of combat power and level, Dietorius was not as good as a group of guardians who had reached the maximum level of 100. However, in terms of crafting professions, Dietorius was the #1 person in charge of the entire Nasaric underground tomb. This was especially true for the production of scrolls, as the scribe was the one who took up most of the responsibility. Without this scribe, the various tools that could be produced in the Nasaric underground tomb would definitely be of a lower grade. Therefore, although Noah had not seen Dietorius before, he at least knew of his existence. On the other side, Dietorius, who was studying a piece of parchment spread out on the stone platform in front of him, finally seemed to notice the situation at the door and raised his head. In the next second, when he saw Noah being protected by Bade and Demiurgos, a scarlet light suddenly flashed in the eye sockets of Dietorius' skull, as if he was frightened and quickly walked out of the stone platform. Then, Dietorius respectfully knelt in front of Noah. "Welcome, Lord Noah." Although they had not directly met each other, because of the settings, all the NPCs in the Nasaric underground tomb clearly knew who they were loyal to. In the past, Noah thought that if they had not met each other, the NPCs in the Nasaric underground tomb would not know that they were loyal to him. Therefore, he walked around the tomb with an indifferent attitude. In the end, there was almost a huge commotion. Since then, Noah understood that although the NPCs in the Nasaric underground tomb had not seen him before, they were very clear about his existence. At that moment, Noah was not surprised by Dietorius' reaction, and he smiled faintly. "Sorry, I came without informing you." "No, Lord Noah, you're too serious. There was no way to see the expression on Dietorius' skull face, but the sincerity in his voice could be heard. The entire Nasaric underground tomb belongs to Lord Noah. Here, Lord Noah can't go anywhere, including this place. Is that so? Noah smiled bitterly. I'm afraid that I'll disturb you. Aren't you making a scroll? It's just a scroll. How can it be more important than greeting the Honorable Supreme? Dietorius lowered his head. So, please don't say that, Lord Noah. That's true, but the scroll you make will not only strengthen the Nasaric underground tomb, but it will also be of great help to me. Noah shook his head and said to Dietorius, I'm also looking forward to the scroll you make, so you can speak with your head held high, Dietorius. It's my honor to be able to make the Honorable Supreme look forward to it. Dietorius seemed to be delighted. I will definitely not disappoint the Supreme Sovereign's expectations. Then I'll have to trouble you. Noah nodded and asked. Is the production of the scroll going smoothly? There has been a lot of progress so far, Dietorius said respectfully. At the very least, I can confirm that there are requirements for the parchment paper used to make scrolls with different levels of magical effects. Oh? Noah asked curiously. How should I put it? After experimenting, I can basically confirm that the parchment paper brought back from the surface can only be used to make magic scrolls of the second level, Dietorius said. As for the third level of magical effects, there's no way to use parchment paper to make them. Is that so? Noah frowned slightly. In other words, the parchment paper in this world isn't suitable for making scrolls. I'm not sure yet. It could also be that my method of making scrolls is different from the method of making scrolls in this world. Dietorius said truthfully. After all, I heard that the potions in this world are very different from the potions in the Nasaric underground tomb. In this world, under normal circumstances, there were 3 ways to make potions that were used as recovery potions. The first was a potion made from herbs. This kind of potion lacked speed and only had the effect of strengthening one's original abilities. For example, it could strengthen one's arm, recover one's stamina, or increase one's endurance. Not only was the effect not satisfactory, but there was also a big problem with the efficiency. The only advantage was that it was very cheap. The second was a potion made from a mixture of magic and herbs. The effect of this kind of potion would be faster than the first, but it still required time. Most adventurers preferred to use this kind of potion. After a battle, they would drink a bottle and slowly recover. The third type was a potion that was made using only magic. This kind of potion was made by injecting magic into an alchemy solution. The effect of the potion would be immediately apparent and had the same effect as the magic that was injected. It was similar to magic scrolls and magic tools that could only be used on oneself. Therefore, this kind of potion was also more expensive. Compared to these 3 kinds of potions, the potions in the Nasaric underground tomb were different. Judging from this, the difference in the production method had a big impact on the items that were made. With my production method, no matter how many times I experiment with the parchment paper that is brought back from the outside, as long as it is used to make scrolls that exceed the 3rd level, it will immediately be scrapped, Dietorius said regretfully. However, if you use higher-level paper materials, you can make higher-level magic scrolls. If you use the highest-level paper materials, such as dragon skin, you can even make a 10th-level magic scroll without any problems. Dragon skin. Noah was deep in thought. Dragon skin was, of course, a high-level item that couldn't be any higher. After all, whether it was this world, the game, or even the other worlds, creatures like dragons were generally more powerful creatures. In this world, dragons were even known as the strongest race. The skin that could only be obtained after hunting dragons was naturally extremely precious. However, there were many dragon skins in the Nasaric underground tomb's treasure hole. It was an item that the members of Ain's Ol Gong spent a lot of effort to obtain. If it took so much effort to do so in the game, it would be even more difficult to do so in this world. It is said that in this world, dragons are the most powerful creatures, and they are also very rare, Dietorius said. In a situation where we can't guarantee a way to obtain dragon skin, I think that it is better to limit the use of the precious dragon skin. Without a supply, it is undoubtedly foolish to use it continuously. Upon hearing this, Noah chuckled and said, "Don't worry. If it is dragon skin, you can use it as much as you want." Dietorius couldn't help but be stunned. "Don't worry, I have a way to ensure that the dragon skin resources will not be cut off." Noah suddenly smiled. "So, you can use it as much as you want?" "Yes," Dietorius immediately replied. Noah thought of the many resources that could be automatically replenished in the Gate of Babylon. Among them, dragon skin was included. "It seems that I can take out a lot of resources for Nasaric to use." Thinking of this, Noah looked at Yair Bade and Demiurgos. "Get someone to come here and choose the summoning books and information books that need to be used, and prepare a backup. Also, arrange the item books and magic books. I want to bring them with me." "Yes." Yair Bade and Demiurgos bowed their heads and accepted the order. Chapter 1240. Although he had asked Yair Bade and Demiurgos to organize the summoning books, item books, magic books, and information books, it was not a task that could be completed in a short period of time. After all, the number of books in the library on the 10th floor of the underground tomb in Nasaric was simply outrageous. This library was the largest one Noah had ever seen, be it in terms of size or collection of books. Fortunately, more than 99% of the books were just simple strategies and novels. Although the remaining 1% of summoning books, item books, magic books, and information books were just as numerous, it would not take too long to organize them, even if it could not be completed in a short period of time. With the manpower that Yair Bade and Demiurgos had gathered, it would probably take about 2 to 3 days. Under such circumstances, Noah directly handed the task of organizing the library to Yair Bade and Demiurgos. He then stayed in the library for an entire day, reading the novels and strategies with great interest, and only left the library when it was dark. Along with Noah, Yair Bade left as well. On the way to his room, Noah sensed the aura following closely behind him. He was speechless as he turned around to look at Yair Bade. "Yair Bade, why have you been following me?" "I was thinking that Lord Noah must be very tired after a busy day today, right?" Yair Bade said with a smile that was as gentle as a goddess, but there was no smile in his eyes. "So, as your subordinate, please at least allow me to watch Lord Noah fall asleep. Otherwise, I won't be at ease." "Is that so?" Noah rubbed his eyebrows, and said directly. "Then, what is the truth?" His words made the gentle smile on Yair Bade's face become slightly distorted, and he became as sinister as a demon. "How can I watch Satya beat me to it?" Those were Yair Bade's heartfelt words. Yair Bade remembered them clearly. In the morning, when Noah decided to punish Satya, he asked her to go to his room at night. A man and a woman alone in a room with a punishment. Who wouldn't be worried? At the very least, Yair Bade couldn't be at ease. How can he do such an enviable thing with Satya alone? Yair Bade's body was emitting a black aura, and his smile became more and more twisted. "That's not a punishment at all, but the best reward. That fellow, Satya, actually accepted it with a clear conscience. As a guardian, she's too unqualified." Seeing that Yair Bade was about to go crazy, Noah's eyes twitched. He could only sigh and look at Yair Bade with narrowed eyes. "In other words, you want me to do the same to you, right?" "That's right." The black smoke around Yair Bade's body instantly disappeared without a trace. His face was flush red, and he began to twist and turn in an extremely intoxicated manner. "May the benevolent and merciful Supreme Sovereign bestow upon me an equal reward, no punishment." Upon hearing this, Noah stared at Yair-Bade speechlessly. Under Noah's gaze, Yair-Bade gradually woke up from his intoxicated state, and his pretty face suddenly became somewhat unnatural. That. May I ask what I did wrong? No, you didn't do anything wrong. Noah suddenly smiled, and it was an extremely mischievous smile. However, since it's the request of the chief guardian, who has worked hard and performed a great service, then I'll fulfill your wish and let you suffer the same punishment as Satya. Seeing Noah's smile, for some reason, Yair-Bade had an ominous premonition in his heart. However, this ominous premonition was immediately drowned out by ecstasy. Finally, Yair-Bade's tears flowed out. I've finally waited for the time when the Supreme Sovereign will favor me. While saying this, Yair-Bade seemed to have thought of something. He twitched the tip of his nose and sniffed his own body. Then, his expression changed, and he hurriedly said to Noah, Lord Noah, please give me some time. I'll go take a bath first. After saying this, Yair-Bade slipped away with a whoosh and disappeared without a trace. What bath are you taking? Noah looked in the direction Yair-Bade had left, and the corners of his mouth lifted slightly. Anyway, it's not something that can only be done after taking a bath. After saying this, Noah turned around, feeling amused. However, when he turned around, a figure with a fragrant body and a bright smile appeared in front of Noah's eyes. I'm done. Lord Noah. Isn't this a little too fast? 3 minutes later, Noah brought Yair-Bade, who had taken a quick bath and was in an extremely good mood, to the door of his room. Yair-Bade's face was full of anticipation, and his eyes were surging with desire as he thought about what would happen next. Inside, Shatiya was holding a mirror and constantly looking at herself. Her pretty face was full of blush, and she looked like a young girl in love. In response, Noah inwardly chuckled and walked over. As soon as she heard footsteps, Shatiya immediately stopped what she was doing and looked over with anticipation and joy. When she saw Noah's figure, Shesha's tender and cute face was filled with heartfelt joy. However, when Shatiya saw Yair-Bade behind Noah, the blush and joy on her face froze and became dangerous. Why are you here? He didn't even need to think to know who he was talking to. Facing Shesha's dangerous expression, Yair-Bade looked at her with a provocative gaze and spoke with a victorious expression. Lord Noah has decided to give me the same reward. No, punishment. So, Shatiya, I'm here to be punished with you. Together. Shesha's expression became even more dangerous, and she looked at Yair-Bade with murderous eyes. You hateful slut, how dare you ruin my plans, what? Don't tell me you don't want to be together. Yair-Bade looked down at Shatiya condescendingly and said. In that case, you can ask Lord Noah to waive your punishment. I can bear it alone. How is that possible? Shatiya yelled with a fierce expression. Fine, let's do it together. It's better than letting you beat me to it. Don't think that we'll be tied if we do it together. Yair-Bade also revealed a sinister expression. I'll definitely make Lord Noah punish me first. Humph. Shatiya snorted in disdain. Let's wait and see. As a result, the two guardians of the underground tomb glared at each other, and there were even sparks in their gazes. Little did they know that looking at Yair-Bade and Shatiya, the smile on Noah's face was also very bright. It was a smile that looked like a prank that was about to succeed. When Yair-Bade and Shatiya entered the room under Noah's lead and arrived in the hall, the two girls saw it at the same time. There was a crystal ball on the table in the hall. It was something that wasn't originally in this room. Lord Noah. Yair-Bade asked in puzzlement. What's this? Are you talking about this crystal ball? Noah stepped forward and patted the huge crystal ball. This is your next punishment. Our next punishment. Yerbade and Shatia were stunned on the spot. Seeing this, Noah shrugged and slowly stroked the crystal ball. The next moment, the crystal ball suddenly lit up and a scene appeared. It was a scene of many densely packed black dots crawling on the ground. "This is..." Shatia said with some uncertainty. "Ants?" "Yes." The densely packed black dots crawling on the ground were all ants. "Both of you, listen carefully," Noah suddenly said. "Next, you will stay here and count ants." "Count? Count ants?" Yerbade and Shatia were completely stunned. "That's right, and you have to count until dawn," Noah said with a faint smile. "Tomorrow, I will ask you how many ants are crawling on the crystal ball. If you answer correctly, your punishment will be over. If you answer incorrectly, you will continue counting the next night. If you keep answering incorrectly, you will continue counting. This is your punishment." Yerbade and Shesha's vision turned black at the same time and they fell to the ground. Chapter 1241. The next day, when Noah woke up from his sleep, the familiar soft touch and body temperature in front of him awakened the rest of his muddled consciousness. Opening his eyes, Noah felt the light weight in front of him as he reached out and slowly lifted the blanket. In the next moment, a cute elf girl appeared in Noah's field of vision. Huff! Huff! The girl seemed to still be in a deep sleep. Her extremely subtle breathing sound faintly rose and fell in the silent space, making the air seem to carry a slight fragrance. The silver-white long hair was extremely soft as it hung down her slender and white back, covering the elf girl's entire back. The elf girl was completely naked, only wearing a pair of black knee socks. She hugged Noah's neck as usual, snuggling into Noah's embrace, directly pressing down on Noah's body as she slept sweetly. Who else could it be other than Aster? This familiar scene made Noah's expression involuntarily relax. Gently stroking Aster's soft silver-white hair and looking at the elf girl's naked body in his arms, Noah didn't have any evil thoughts in his heart, only warmth. Under normal circumstances, as long as there was no one beside Noah, then the next morning, Noah would find Aster in the same state, sleeping in his arms. It wasn't that Noah hadn't tried to wake up in the middle of the night. However, Aster didn't appear in this state in the middle of the night. Thus, Noah judged that Aster should only wake up in the morning, turn into her human form, lie in his arms, and continue to sleep. Then, after dawn, if Aster woke up earlier than Noah, then this elf girl would use all kinds of methods that would excite a healthy male to wake Noah up. If Noah had woken up earlier than Aster, he would have seen this young lady who looked more like an animal than an elf appear in this form. Thus, Noah lovingly kissed the tip of Aster's nose, then quietly got up and quietly got off the bed without waking Aster up. Covering Aster with the blanket, Noah smoothed the bangs in front of the sleeping Aster's forehead, then straightened up and began to wash up. Walking out of the bedroom, the hall appeared in front of Noah's eyes. Noah gently closed the bedroom door and cast his gaze into the hall. There, Yerbade and Zaisha were sitting side by side at the table in the hall. On the table, a large crystal ball was still playing the scene of a group of densely packed ants crawling across the ground. Yerbade and Zaisha stared at this scene, as if they were broken puppets, muttering in a daze, 13768548813. 13768548814. 13768548815. It was clear that the two girls were still counting the ants. Looking at Yerbade and Zaisha shaking their heads and muttering absent-mindedly like broken puppets, Noah felt a little guilty. Poor Yerbade and Zaisha were full of expectations that Noah would favor them, but in the end, they were met with a cruel punishment. Noah's voice couldn't help but raise a little due to panic. "You. What are you doing?" In the face of Noah's questioning, who had lost his calm and had fallen into a state of panic, Yerbade acted as if he didn't hear anything. It was as if he was completely immersed in his own world and couldn't hear anything from the outside world. "I can't hold it in anymore. Yerbade said drunkenly, as if he was drunk. I keep telling myself. I have to hold on. I have to hold on. As long as I hold on, until I finish counting the ants, then I will be able to obtain Sir Noah's favor. Now. Now. Finally, this moment has come. Right? Cold. Calm down, Yerbade. Noah could only struggle to get up. Get off of me first. However, no matter how much Noah struggled, there was no way for him to break free from Yerbade's restraints. My level has already reached LV4, and my all ability is at the SSS stage. In terms of physical ability, I am stronger than Hercules, who descended in the form of a servant, but there is no way for me to push Yerbade away. In fact, Noah couldn't push Yerbade away. Firstly, it was because Yerbade was a max-level warrior character with extremely high physical attributes. Secondly, it was because the place he touched was too soft, so Noah couldn't use his full strength. In such a situation, Yerbade murmured in a daze. It's all Sir Noah's fault. Undoubtedly, I'm looking forward to it, but I can't get what I want. That's right. It's all Sir Noah's fault. The corners of Noah's mouth began to twitch. It was at this time that Xiataya made her move. That's right. It's all Lord Noah's fault. Zaisha stood up shakily and suddenly raised her head. Like a predator, she bared her fangs and brandished her claws as she pounced towards Noah. It's all Sir Noah's fault. Noah was directly pounced on. Together with the two girls, he rolled on the ground in a sorry state. That's enough. Noah couldn't stand it anymore and roared. Chapter 1242. Noah's Gate of Babylon was a treasure trove jointly built by Gaia and Alea, the two suppressive forces. Even the hero King Gilgamesh, who claimed to have all the treasures of an era, could only stare at the treasures inside. Noah's Gate of Babylon had all kinds of rare resources such as fine steel, dragon skin, and so on. In addition, Noah's Gate of Babylon had the ability to automatically replenish consumables. There were many resources that were extremely precious in the eyes of others, but they were inexhaustible and inexhaustible. For the development of the underground tomb in Nasarek, Noah asked Yerbade and Demiurgos to sort out all the summoning books, item books, magic books, and information books in the library to enrich the Gate of Babylon. At the same time, he also took out many of the precious resources in the Gate of Babylon and provided them to the underground tomb in Nasarek for use. With these precious resources, the production of all kinds of items in the underground tomb in Nasarek would definitely be fruitful. As for the summoning books, item books, magic books, and information books that Yerbade and Demiurgos sorted out, they were all put into Noah's Gate of Babylon. Yerbade and Demiurgos took the copies of the summoning books and information books with them. They also took a large amount of gold coins from Noah and prepared to summon high-level monsters. They also started to let the NPCs in the crafting department use the information books to create all kinds of equipment, items. As for the summoning books, considering that the space in the underground tomb in Nasarek was limited, Yerbade and Demiurgos still needed to discuss how to use them. Otherwise, if they only carried out the summoning, the sudden increase in the population of the underground tomb in Nasarek would definitely cause these monsters to become a burden. Therefore, what kind of monsters to summon, 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 what kind of requirements there were in terms of race, profession, skills, and magic, etc., were all things that needed to be discussed. Noah handed all of this over to Yerbade and Demiurgos. It wasn't that Noah wanted to be a hands-off manager. It was just that Yerbade and Demiurgos were definitely more familiar with the situation in the Great Graveyard in Nasarek than Noah. Moreover, he was much more familiar with it. Since that was the case, rather than getting involved, it was better to let Yerbade and Demiurgos take full responsibility to prevent them from ruining things. Noah did not want to give orders carelessly due to insufficient information and cause something like Shadia to happen again. Therefore, it was better to leave everything here to Yair Bede and Demiurgos. As for Noah himself, he would occasionally listen to the reports from Yair Bede and Demiurgos, and learn about the operation of each floor of the great tomb of Nasaric from the other guardians. When he was free, he would check on the management system in the throne room. His days were quite fulfilling. On this day, Noah was browsing through the management system in the throne room. Through the management system's display of the operation of the great tomb of Nasaric, Noah could easily see that the number of monsters in the entire stronghold was increasing. In addition, various facilities responsible for producing equipment, items were also operating in full swing. Presumably, every once in a while, these facilities would produce a batch of equipment, items to fill the inventory of the great tomb of Nasaric, right? It's going well, Noah said as he flipped through the main window that appeared in front of him. If it continues to develop at such a high speed, can the supply of resources be maintained? The problem with gold coins was no longer a problem after confirming that no matter what kind of gold coin it was, as long as it contained gold, it could be used. However, producing equipment, items not only required gold coins, but also various materials. Although Noah's treasure trove had almost everything, it was only relative to the shaped moon world. In this world and the game world, there were many things that were not in Noah's treasure trove. Otherwise, Noah would not be tempted by the items in the treasure hall and library of the great tomb of Nasaric. The resources in the treasure trove are not lacking, but the resources that are not in the treasure trove are limited. Noah said thoughtfully. Should I slightly control the projects that consume limited resources? Just as Noah was thinking about this problem, outside the door in front of him, a figure slowly walked in. It was Annabelle. Aware of Annabelle's arrival, Noah raised his head slightly and looked over. At the same time, Annabelle said such a sentence to Noah with a rather serious expression. Sir Noah, there is an intruder. Noah's eyebrows suddenly raised. On the ground quite far away from the great tomb of Nasaric where the throne hall was located, outside the great tomb of Nasaric that presented the scene of a tomb, 2 uninvited guests were welcomed. Wow! I didn't expect there to really be a tomb here. You scared me. At the entrance, Clementine pointed at the tomb in front of her with a frivolous and exaggerated attitude and said with a laugh. There is actually a tomb in the middle of this grassland, isn't this too strange? Right? Right? Humph! Looking at the extremely pretentious Clementine, Kadjit snorted coldly, but also showed a somewhat excited smile. I didn't expect there to be such a harvest. This is really unexpected. Clementine and Kadjit came here only to find the magic chanter who scared away Ylantal's adventurers and had the ability to summon extremely powerful undeads. Because Kadjit often dealt with undeads, he had a certain ability to track down the unique negative energy of undeads. When he planned to track down the powerful undeads that were summoned, he unexpectedly discovered this tomb. Clementine grinned, but her eyes cast a sharp gaze like that of a ferocious beast, sweeping the interior of the tomb. Clementine could clearly see. In the tomb, the grass had been carefully cut, and she could see at a glance that someone was carrying out regular maintenance. Needless to say, there must be people who come here often. Clementine looked at the ancestral hall in the center of the tomb and showed a ferocious smile like that of a predator. There might even be people who are like little Kadjit, living directly with those dead fellows. Who knows? I just don't know if that person is the one we are looking for. Kadjit sneered again and again. The only thing we can be sure of is that there is very powerful negative energy in this tomb, and there is definitely very powerful undeads inside. It was precisely because of this that Kadjit felt both excited and nervous. He was excited because since there was a very powerful undeads here, it meant that there was a large number of low-level undeads, which could allow the powerful undeads to be born. The existence of a large number of undeads meant a large amount of negative energy. Kadget's goal was precisely this negative energy. However, facing such an undead's army that had a powerful undeads as their commander, could the two of them win? This was what made Kadget nervous. What? Clementine said in a light tone. Little Kadget, are you scared? What about you? Kadget looked at Clementine speechlessly. Aren't you scared? Scared? Clementine seemed to be amused, laughing loudly in a way that was completely unlike a young girl. That laughter was extremely sharp, so sharp that it was even a little disgusting. With such a loud laugh, Clementine held her abdomen, and her voice carried a hair-raising cruelty. Although I don't know what is inside, but I have already surpassed mortals and reached the hero domain, so I definitely can't lose. However, just as such a sentence fell from Clementine's mouth, a mocking voice suddenly sounded, and very clearly drilled into Clementine and Kadget's ears. Hero domain. That's really amazing, isn't it? I'm a little scared. Chapter 1243. The voice that suddenly echoed in the entire space came so abruptly. The cruel smile on Clementine's face suddenly froze on her face, and Kadget's expression also changed abruptly, making the entire atmosphere tense. The first to calm down was Clementine. While Kadget's expression was still changing wildly, Clementine restrained her expression, raised her head, and cast her sharp gaze like that of a carnivorous beast towards the cemetery in front of her. She saw that in the cemetery, a figure was slowly walking out from the path in front of the centermost large ancestral hole. Although I really want to ask how you found this place. Saying this, Noah walked out of the cemetery while watching Clementine and Kadget, and his eyes gradually narrowed. But, if you think about it carefully, I didn't purposely get people to hide the large underground tomb in Nassarik, so it's natural that it would be found, right? That being said, Clementine and Kadget obviously didn't come to the large underground tomb in Nassarik by chance. Whether it was Clementine or Kadget, although they were surprised by Noah's appearance, they weren't surprised. Clearly, these two uninvited guests had come prepared. Or rather, Clementine and Kadget came for Noah. Oh. Is there really someone here? Clementine's somewhat unsightly smile hung on her face again, but her gaze was always sizing up Noah. Hey, don't tell me you're the one who scared the hell out of those adventurers in Ylantir. What? Is that your friend? Noah stopped and looked at Clementine from a distance as he spoke lightly. You don't look like you're here to avenge someone. That kind of thing, no matter what. Clementine tilted her neck and grinned like a broken doll. I just want to confirm if you're interesting, that's enough. Is that so? Noah muttered to himself for a while, then looked at Kadget as if he was no longer interested in Clementine. Then, what are you here for? I heard you're a magic chanter who can summon extremely powerful undead. Kadget gripped the black staff in his hand tightly and stared at Noah. Why don't you let me see how your summoning magic is? Oh. Noah raised his eyebrows and finally smiled. In other words, if you're not here to pick a fight, then you're here to challenge me, right? Pick a fight. Challenge me. Clementine was startled at first, then burst out laughing. Good. That's a good way of putting it. I like that way of putting it. In the next second, Clementine's laughter came to an abrupt halt. A killing intent that was as sharp as a blade that made one's skin hurt suddenly erupted from her body. That's right. I'm here to pick a fight. As soon as she finished speaking, Clementine stomped her feet on the ground and shot forward. In the meantime, in Clementine's hand, a short awl suddenly flashed and was held in her hand. As she waved it, it tore the air apart. With a sharp sound of wind breaking, Clementine flashed in front of Noah with a sneer. That speed was as fast as the wind. Shio dash. In the next moment, the sharp short awl was stabbed out by Clementine. The target was Noah's eyes. Ding dash. A crisp sound of collision shook the air slightly. It was the sound of a finger blocking the short awl that was piercing towards him like a bullet with the tip of his finger. I see. Ignoring Clementine's surprised expression, Noah said understandingly. In other words, I don't have to show you mercy, right? As soon as he finished speaking. Bang dash. A burst of violent magic rose from Noah's body and turned into a substantial shockwave that suddenly shook and surged out. Dong dash. In a low muffled sound, Clementine was directly sent flying by the substantial shockwave of magic. Her feet brushed against the ground and she was forced to retreat a distance of more than 10 meters before she could stabilize herself. Tisk. Clementine held her chest that hurt from the shockwave and made a speechless sound. That bastard, not only is he a magic chanter, but he's also a monk. Although Clementine's short awl did not have high lethality, it could not be more fragile than a human body. To be able to use a finger to block the sharp short awl, there was no other possibility other than a monk who could train his body to the strength of various metals. No, maybe that guy activated some defensive magic when I didn't know, or maybe it was the power of some magic tool. Clementine overturned her previous guess. How can a magic chanter who has the ability to summon a powerful immortal also be a monk at the same time? Noah raised his eyes slightly in response to Clementine's self-muttering guess. He looked at her and said with a faint smile on his face. Is that so? After saying that, Noah's body suddenly shook, and his figure disappeared on the spot. Clementine's eyes shrunk, and without hesitation, she stomped on the ground and retreated. However, just as Clementine's figure retreated, a ghostly figure suddenly appeared behind her and reached out a hand and put it on Clementine's back. Feeling the touch of the hand on her back, Clementine's face finally changed. Then, a voice entered Clementine's ears. Are you a magic chanter? Or a monk? Why don't you guess again, a big shot who has stepped into the realm of heroes? At this moment, Clementine felt like there was a knife on her neck, and an extremely strong sense of crisis rose in her heart. It was only then that Clementine understood. Whether it was a magic chanter or a monk. As long as Noah slightly moved the hand on Clementine's back, Clementine's end was obvious. Without any hesitation, Clementine almost subconsciously turned around and fiercely thrust out the short awl in her hand. However, at the same time, a fist mixed with a terrifying wind carried a chilling momentum and directly smashed in Clementine's direction. At this moment, the sense of crisis in Clementine's heart surged to the peak. Clementine's battle instincts, cultivated from years of desperately struggling between life and death, told her. If she received this punch, she would be seriously injured even if she didn't die. Clementine, who had completely lost her composure, suddenly screamed. Unyielding stronghold. At this critical moment, Clementine used a skill that was like a warrior's trump card, a martial technique. A superb martial technique that could allow the user's defense to rise to the level of a city wall in an instant. Unyielding stronghold. Therefore, in the next moment, the fist carrying a terrifying wind collided with the short awl that suddenly flashed with the light of a martial technique. Bang! In the sound of something exploding, the short awl collided with the fist carrying a terrifying wind. The short awl, whose defense was raised to the level of a city wall in an instant, was actually directly blasted apart by the frightening strength of the fist. Crack! The terrifying fist's undiminished momentum caused Clementine's wrist, which was holding the short awl, to produce a cracking sound, instantly bending into an angle that made one's teeth ache. Before Clementine could scream, a leg turned into a black shadow, wildly lashing out like a long whip, and lashing Clementine's side waist. Bang! In the sound of a muffled blow, Clementine violently spat out a mouthful of blood, and her figure flew out, heavily smashing into a tombstone. The tombstone was smashed into pieces of gravel, directly burying Clementine. At this moment, Noah seemed to flash out of thin air, glancing at the pile of gravel that buried Clementine's figure, then turned around and looked at the shocked Kadjit. So, it's your turn next. Hearing this, Kadjit couldn't help but take a step back, and roared with fear on his face. You! Who are you? Only now do you remember to ask for someone else's name. Noah laughed out loud. But that's not important anymore. I just need to know that you came with ill intentions, and that's enough. Chapter 1244. The cool breeze, mixed with the smell of soil, blew through the surface graveyard of Nazarik's underground graveyard, causing the tense atmosphere in the air to suddenly become heavy. Looking at Noah, who was standing against the wind with his robe fluttering in the breeze, Kadjit's expression became extremely ugly. However, compared to his ugly expression, Kadjit's heart was more terrified of Noah. How is this possible? Kadjit murmured in disbelief. How can there be a guy who can defeat that woman so easily? Kadjit did not have a good impression of Clementine. There was no other reason other than that Clementine was a person with a personality defect. In the Sealian theocracy, there were a total of 6 special intelligence units, and the unit called the Dark Scripture was the most special one. It was not like the Sunshine Scripture, which had hundreds of people, and there were only a few dozen of them. However, the Dark Scripture, formed by these dozen of people, was the trump card of the entire Sealian theocracy. There was only one condition to be able to join the Dark Scripture. That was to at least reach the level of a hero. In other words, in the Dark Scripture, every member had to be at least level 29, and their strength was comparable to the highest level of a fine steel adventurer. Clementine came from such a unit where everyone was at the level of a hero. However, Clementine betrayed the Dark Scripture. The reason was that Clementine wanted to snatch a magical tool that was not of much use to her on a whim. Since then, Clementine betrayed the Dark Scripture, revealing her ferocious and cruel side. This woman loved to torture people. Moreover, no matter if it was an enemy or an innocent passerby, as long as Clementine had that thought, she would not hesitate to use the cruelest methods to torture people. Kadjit was not a good person. Otherwise, he would not have wanted to turn the entire Yelander into a dead city for his own purpose, to collect negative energy. However, it was impossible for Kadjit to have a good impression of such a person with a personality defect. However, he had to admit that at least, in terms of strength, Clementine was indeed quite strong. Kadjit believed that even if Gudjefu was the strongest warrior in the kingdom, Clementine would still be able to fight him to a draw. How could such a person be defeated in 2 or 3 moves by this man of unknown origin? What kind of joke was this? What? Aren't you coming over? Seeing Kadjit's ugly face, Noah sneered. You're the ones who came looking for trouble, and I've personally come out to accept the challenge. Why don't you show some promise? Don't underestimate me. Kadjit's heart was filled with anger as he whispered in a hoarse voice. Even if you can defeat that person with a personality defect, as a magic chanter, you will never be able to defeat me. With these words, Kadjit raised the hand that wasn't holding the black staff. In that hand, there was a pitch-black bead, so black that it was beginning to turn purple. Clementine had once said that the summoning magic that Kadjit could use was of a lower level, but it could be amplified through precious magical tools and unleash great power. That magic tool was the bead in Kadjit's hand. Just watch. The power of my orb of death. Kadjit roared loudly. Come out for me. Bone Dragon. As his voice fell, a dazzling light suddenly flickered on the pitch-black orb. Following the activation of the magic tool called the Orb of Death, the entire ground began to tremble. Noah's eyebrows slightly wrinkled. With his outstanding sensing ability, Noah could clearly feel it. Underground, there were 2 more auras. Gotcha! Immediately after, the ground in front of Kadjit cracked and slowly protruded. Ping dash! The protruding ground suddenly exploded, revealing 2 gargantuan figures. They were two colossal creatures that were more than 3 meters tall and formed from countless human bones, with long necks and bones forming wings. Impressively, they were bone dragons. Roar dash. The two bone dragons' eye sockets flashed with ominous glints as they faced Noah's direction and let out a roar that shook the atmosphere. Ha 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 ha. Just watch. This is the power of the orb of death. The appearance of the bone dragon seemed to have restored Kadjit's confidence, and he let out an unpleasant laugh. The bone dragons have an absolute resistance to magic. No matter what kind of magic chanter you are, they are invincible natural enemies. Even if you defeat that person with a flawed personality, as a magic chanter, you definitely can't win against two bone dragons. Kadjit, who was laughing like this, didn't notice. Noah, who stood against the wind amidst the sound waves emitted by the two bone dragons, had traces of interest and ridicule in his eyes. The interest was towards the orb of death in Kadjit's hands. Although he didn't know what kind of magic tool it was, there wasn't such an item in the large underground tomb of Nasaric, which made Noah quite interested. As for the ridicule, it was directed towards Kadjit. In the battle with Clementine just now, Noah didn't even use a single spell. The whole battle was mainly close combat. In the end, Kadjit still thought that Noah was a magic chanter. He was really stupid beyond belief. At that moment, Noah sighed expressionlessly and raised a hand. Two golden ripples, like water waves, suddenly fluctuated in the space on both sides of Noah's body. Two long spears popped out, like arrows knocked on a bowstring, and suddenly aimed at the two huge bone dragons. Kadjit only saw two golden lights suddenly flash in front of his eyes. That was the scene of the two long spears explosively shooting out, flying towards the two bone dragons like meteors. Immediately after, the two long spears, which were extremely small compared to the bone dragons, fell on the bone dragons like beams of light. Pang! The sound of the collision neatly overlapping each other resounded. The two bone dragons were directly blown apart by the two long spears, turning into bones that filled the sky, sprinkling down from midair. W.H. Kadjit was aghast. Noah ignored the horrified Kadjit and cast his gaze on the orb in his hand. You seem to be holding something interesting. Then take it as my reward for accompanying you for so long. Noah lifted his feet and walked in the direction of Kadjit. Kadjit's face was filled with fear as he staggered backwards. Pang! At this moment, a muffled explosion resounded. Only to see that the pile of stones formed by the smashed tombstone suddenly burst open, and a figure scuttled out from within. Gale break. This was a martial skill that could increase speed. Flowing water acceleration. This was a martial skill that could accelerate the nerves, make movements break through the limits of the body, and increase attack speed and movement speed at the same time. Super evasion. This was a martial skill that could increase agility. Ability enhancement. This was a martial skill that could increase physical ability. Ability enhancement. This was a martial skill that could increase physical ability by a large margin. Generally speaking, a warrior could only use one type of martial skill at the same time. A few people could use two types at the same time, and only those who were truly strong could use 3 or 4 types at the same time. Even a fine steel adventurer could only use about 5 types of martial skills at the same time. At this moment, one hand was twisted into an impossible angle. Clementine, whose mouth was still full of blood, used 5 types of martial skills at the same time. With a ferocious expression like a ghost, she violently shot towards Noah's direction. Die for me. In the sharp roar, Clementine, who used 5 types of martial skills to strengthen her body at the same time, flew behind Noah with unprecedented speed. The short awl in her hand was like an arrow that pierced through the sky. In the ear-piercing sound of the air breaking, she violently stabbed towards Noah's back. Once she made a move, it was a fatal blow. Ding! Unfortunately, in the crisp sound of the collision, that violent short all was blocked by a finger. Just like at the beginning. "It's not over yet." Clementine roared out, and fiercely clenched the short awl in her hand. Pang! In the next moment, the short awl suddenly burst into a burst of flames, covering Noah's entire body. Chapter 1245. Ping dash. Bright flames rose up in the cemetery, turning the fiery red flames into monstrous heat waves that completely covered Noah's body. The scalding flames burned in the center of the cemetery, causing the surrounding temperature to suddenly rise, causing the atmosphere to become scalding hot. Ha 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 dash. Clementine, whose hand was twisted to an impossible angle and whose mouth was still bleeding, laughed like a maniac. "Go to hell. You bastard." While laughing like this, Clementine continued to turn the short awl in her hand with a ferocious expression. Peng peng pinch peng peng dash. Suddenly, in a series of continuous explosions, waves of shocking flames exploded from the short awl in Clementine's hand, causing the thick flames to carry a scalding heat wave and expand in the surroundings. Seeing this scene, Kadjit, who was retreating in a sorry state due to his fear of Noah, couldn't help but be overjoyed. Clementine's weapon had an additional spell that could accumulate magic. This additional spell could accumulate all kinds of magic and store all of these magic in the weapon, allowing Clementine's short awl to have the ability to use all kinds of magic. It could be considered a rather special magic tool. However, the magic accumulated in the weapon was the same as other consumable magic tools. Each time it was used, it would be used up, unless new magic was injected and accumulated. Now, Clementine had released the third-rank spell accumulated in the short awl, Fireball, all at once. Being bombarded by so many third-rank spells at close range, Kadjit didn't believe that anyone could survive unscathed. Unfortunately, the joy on Kadjit's face quickly froze as he thought this. Because, in the center of the surging flames, a black shadow quietly appeared. Swish dash. A hand suddenly reached out from the magma-like flames at an extremely shocking speed. Clementine, who was immersed in the pleasure of using violence, didn't even have time to react before her neck was directly grabbed by the hand that suddenly reached out from the flames in front of her. Then, that hand was like a pair of pliers, slowly tightening. Goo dash. Clementine's maniacal laughter from a second ago was immediately replaced by a suffocating sound of anguish. Her hands almost subconsciously tightened around the hand that was strangling her neck, and her beast-like face began to turn red. It was only at this moment that another hand reached out from the scorching flames. As if dispelling the smoke, it suddenly waved. Ping dash. Accompanied by a muffled explosion, the flames that carried an astonishing amount of heat were directly scattered, turning into sparks that filled the sky and gradually disappeared. You seem to like violence. Noah, who was completely unscathed, held Clementine tightly. He looked at Clementine, whose face was starting to turn red. His eyes flashed with a cold light as he looked at Clementine, who was being held in the air by him. Clementine's beautiful face was faintly red. I wonder if someone like you would also like to be treated with the same kind of violence by others. As he spoke, Noah continued to tighten his grip, causing Clementine to repeatedly let out pained cries. Her eyes began to roll back, and her feet that were suspended in the air kept kicking, like a struggling frog. It was an unbearable sight. Watching the scene of Clementine, who had reached the hero domain, struggling like a powerless child in Noah's hands, Kadjit only felt that all the strength in his body was dissipating. His body went limp, and he sat on the ground. Kadjit didn't even have the strength to hold the black staff, and let it fall to the ground. He used the rest of his strength to hold the pearl of death. His hands trembled, and he looked at Noah with eyes full of fear. Monster. Monster, at this time, only boundless fear and regret emerged in Kadjit's heart. Fear was naturally fear of Noah. Regret was that he shouldn't have been convinced by Clementine, who had a personality flaw, to come here and face this monster in front of him. Warriors who had reached the hero domain were completely vulnerable in his hands. The bone dragon that had absolute magic resistance and could completely nullify magic below the 7th rank, and there were even 2 of them. In his hands, they also couldn't survive a single move. What was this kind of existence if not a monster? At least, it was impossible for there to be such an existence among humans. Kadjit was completely overwhelmed by fear, and he hysterically roared at Noah, "How? How can a human be so strong to this extent? How can he be so strong that even one of the special intelligence units of the Celian theocracy, that dark scripture, that only those who have reached the hero domain can join, can't fight back?" As soon as these words were spoken, the atmosphere in the air suddenly changed. Noah slowly tightened his grip. He didn't have the slightest intention of showing mercy as he planned to choke Clementine to death. He suddenly turned his head and looked at Kadjit. "You said, one of the special intelligence units of the Celian theocracy." Kadjit, who was stared at by Noah's deep dark eyes, froze there and couldn't speak anymore. Ignoring Kadjit, Noah turned his head again and stared at Clementine. "You are one of the special intelligence units of the Celian theocracy. The person from the dark scripture." Clementine couldn't speak at all. She could only kick her legs that were suspended in the air and let out muffled cries. Under this kind of situation, Clementine's breathing gradually became weak, and the strength of her struggling also began to slow down bit by bit. If this continued, it would only take less than 5 seconds for a powerhouse who had reached the limit of a human to be reduced to suffocating to death. At this time, Noah let go of his hand. Clementine, who fell due to gravity, directly fell to the ground. Chapter 1246. Drip, nearly a dozen sharp blades pierced through Kadjit's thin body. While keeping Kadjit in place, the crimson blood on the tip of the blades dripped to the ground, gradually forming a pool of blood. Kadjit first slowly lowered his head, looking at the sharp blades that pierced through his body one after another, the blades covered in his own blood. He then raised his head with difficulty, looking at his surroundings. It wasn't until this time that Kadjit was able to clearly see what kind of monster had pierced his body with a blade. They were monsters that were about the same size as humans, and looked like black spiders in ninja attire. Since they were monsters that looked like black spiders, then these monsters naturally had 8 legs. As for those 8 legs, they were all sharp blades. In other words, the sharp blades that pierced through Kadjit's body were the legs of these black spider-like monsters. Looking at these monsters, Kadjit slowly opened his mouth. While blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth, he spat out words with difficulty. "Wh. Why?" Kadjit's question, if heard by others, might not be able to understand anything. However, everyone present clearly understood what Kadjit's question was. That was, where did these monsters come from, and when did they appear? Undoubtedly, until a second ago, there were no other creatures around except for Noah, Clementine, and Kadjit, right? However, this question was a bit boring. Magic that can make you invisible shouldn't be rare, right? Noah said faintly. Although these monsters don't rely on magic, but a special skill to make them invisible, they have indeed been around since the beginning, and have been guarding this place. If I hadn't appeared, the moment you stepped into the tomb, they would have directly strangled you. This was also the reason why Noah personally appeared here. Previously, Noah had ordered demiurgos to collect information on the Celian cult. But because the cost of maintaining the great necropolis in Nasaric had been solved, Noah asked demiurgos to focus on the development of the great necropolis in Nasaric. Otherwise, he would have gotten the information on the Celian cult long ago. After all, Noah only needed information on the location of the capital of the Celian cult. The location of the capital of a neighboring country, he only needed to go to Ylantir and spend some effort to ask, and he would be able to get it easily. The reason why he didn't do that was because the tomb in Nassarik was more important. After knowing that there were intruders, Noah decided to come to the surface personally to see if he could collect any useful information, and not let the monsters guarding the tomb directly strangle the source of information. He didn't expect that this time, he would meet one of the special intelligence units of the Celian cult, and it was a member of the Dark Scripture. It was the most suitable. When you decided to invade this place, was it? Noah looked at Kadjit, stared and closed his eyes. Thus, you can hold on to your regret and die here. Kadjit's eyes widened a little, and then his pupils began to dilate. His head drooped down, and he completely stopped moving. The monsters that pierced through Kadjit's body pulled out their blades one after another, bringing along a burst of red blood. They let Kadjit fall to the ground, and the ground was gradually dyed red. Deal with the corpse. Noah glanced at Kadjit's corpse, and then shifted his gaze to Clementine. Also, bring this woman back. The surrounding monsters immediately bowed their heads respectfully, received the order, and went forward to detain Clementine. Realizing that she had really provoked a powerful opponent, and also understood the cruel fate that she would have to bear next, Clementine hysterically resisted and struggled, but she was completely unable to free herself from the hands of any of the monsters around her. No matter what, Clementine was at most a character who had reached level 35 at most. On the other hand, the monsters on the surface of Nazarik's graveyard were at least level 50. Under these circumstances, it was impossible for Clementine to escape from the hands of the monsters that were detaining her. Thus, under Clementine's sharp screams, this person with a personality defect was escorted by the surrounding monsters into the large ancestral hall in the center of the tomb, and into the large tomb of Nassarik. What awaited this person with a personality defect would be countless times more cruel than the torture that they inflicted on others in their life. This was the only thing that could be ascertained. After Clementine was escorted into the large tomb of Nassarik by the monsters, Noah walked forward and came in front of the pearl of death that Kadjit had thrown on the ground. He bent down and picked it up. At this moment, the pearl of death in Noah's hand flashed with a faint light. Then, Noah heard it. A voice suddenly rang out in his head. "Greetings, great lord of the tomb, I offer you the highest respect." The sudden voice startled Noah. Then, he realized something and looked at the pearl of death in his hand. Looking at the pearl of death that was emitting a faint light in his hand, Noah narrowed his eyes and said softly, "Was it you who spoke just now?" Under Noah's gaze, the voice from just now sounded in Noah's mind again. "Yes, great lord of the tomb, please allow me to introduce myself. I am the pearl of death, an extremely rare item of wisdom in this world, please advise me." Intelligent item. Noah held the pearl tightly in his hand. In other words, although you are a magical item, you have intelligence. That's right. The voice in Noah's mind sounded a little proud. Although I can't say that I am unique, but until now, I have never seen a second item with intelligence like me. Hearing this, Noah was more or less surprised. There were too many magic items in the underground tomb of Nassarik to count. Among them, there were many treasures that were absolutely precious to this world. Some were even treasures that only existed in myths and legends. But even with so many treasures, there was not one that could be like the Pearl of Death, which had its own intelligence. However, in the next second, Noah regained his calm. After all, this was a world where magic prevailed. Using magic, it was not difficult to seal a soul in an item and let the item have intelligence. Then, what is your purpose in talking to me? Noah asked with interest. Don't tell me you want to recognize me as your master or something. Yes, great lord of the tomb. The voice in Noah's mind began to carry a tone of respect and flattery. An intelligent tool like this one should naturally be used by the most outstanding person. Your strength has convinced this one, so please accept this one's loyalty and allow this one to work for you, great lord of the graveyard. Hearing this, Noah's heart was filled with disdain. used by the most outstanding person? Was someone like Kadjit the most outstanding person? Definitely not. However, didn't this pearl of death still work for Kadjit? In other words, this so-called intelligent tool was simply a tool that spoke human language to people and ghosts. Originally, Noah was slightly interested in it. But now, Noah's interest in it had fallen to the lowest point. Just as Noah was about to say something, in Noah's mind, an emotionless but pleasing young voice suddenly appeared. No need. As the voice sounded, the small silver sword on Noah's back emitted a blinding light. Master, you have me, the holy sword that can kill the demon king. You don't need me to pick up something from the side of the road. As soon as he finished speaking, the dazzling light emitted from the small silver sword shot towards the pearl of death, causing the pitch-black light on the pearl of death to tremble and let out a miserable shriek. In the next second, the round pearl in Noah's hand lost its light and the voice from before disappeared without a trace. Noah almost laughed. This Aster, why was he jealous of a pearl? Chapter 1247. Everyone knew that in this world, humans were an extremely weak race. Although humans had built many great cities on flat land, and even established several countries, the fact that they lived on flat land only highlighted the frailty of human beings. After all, flat land was a very dangerous terrain. First of all, if they were attacked, there would be nowhere to hide. Moreover, even if they wanted to escape, they would be easily discovered by the enemy. For the other races, choosing to build a city on flat land without any terrain advantage was simply the height of stupidity. However, humans were a race that did not have night vision, nor were they born with a strong body like magical creatures. They could only choose flat terrain as their habitat. It could be said that if they did not choose flat land, which had nowhere to hide, as their place of residence, they would not be able to create their own life. In this world, there were many races that were more developed and had a more advanced civilization than the human race. However, none of those races could rule this world. Hundreds of years ago, the developed races of this world fought against the Eight Desires King, who wanted to rule the world, and were severely weakened by the Eight Desires King's terrifying power. Compared to the other races, humans did not have any special powers, and were ignored by the powerful races. They did not participate in the Eight Desires King's war, but instead, they survived the war. Until now, the reason why humans could continue to exist in this world and not be eliminated was because of the war from hundreds of years ago, which weakened the powerful races to a critical state. Even so, for hundreds of years, humans still could not turn the tables in this world. It was easy to imagine how weak the power of humans was in this world. However, in such a world, there were also powerful human countries. The Yestage Kingdom, the Bahaz Empire, the Celian Theocracy. These three countries were undoubtedly very rare human countries. Although there were also human countries in other places, those countries were either scattered all over the world and were threatened by various powerful races, or they were simply reduced to ranches of carnivorous demon countries and were raised like livestock. Their situation was extremely miserable. As such, the kingdoms, empires, and theocracies were undoubtedly in a much better situation than the other human countries. Among these three human countries, the most powerful one was undoubtedly the theocracy. This could be seen from the capital of the theocracy alone. There were many breathtaking sceneries here. One of them was that almost all the roads were paved with bricks and stones. This was a scene that could not be seen in the neighboring countries. Think about the royal capital of a kingdom. The ground there was mostly bumpy, and the kingdom was not strong enough to pave the roads of the entire city with bricks and tiles. Of course, the reason for this situation was also because of the kingdom's internal and external troubles, as well as the gradual decay of the regime. Apart from the theocracy, the imperial capital of the empire also had extremely advanced stone paths, but the theocracy was still superior. If one were to look down from the sky above the capital of the theocracy, they would be able to clearly see that there was a central avenue that was directly connected to the highway. Just like a normal road, the center was for carriages and horses to pass through while the two sides were sidewalks. The difference was that there were many small guardrails between the road and the sidewalk to ensure the safety of pedestrians. Street lamps stood on both sides of the road. At night, the street lamps lit up with magical light, illuminating the entire capital. Apart from this, there were also many people dressed as soldiers patrolling the capital, giving off a sense of vitality. This was a scene that could not be seen in a kingdom. At the very least, Noah, who had been to the royal capital once and clearly knew about the decay and corruption there, was very sure of this. Floating in the air and looking down at the bustling city full of vitality, Noah could not help but sigh. As expected of a country with players as its backing. The degree of prosperity is not something that kingdoms or empires can compare to. Although that was what he said, Noah's eyes flashed with cold emotions as he looked down at the capital of the silent theocracy. After capturing Clementine alive and torturing her, Noah was able to obtain information that led him to this place. Today, it was time for Noah to settle the score with the people of the silent theocracy. Apart from Noah, the strongest fighting force in Nazarik's underground tomb had all arrived. Among all the guardians, Zaisha was the strongest in duels. Among all the guardians, Cositas was the strongest in attack. Among all the guardians, Yon was the strongest in group battles. Among all the guardians, Malay was the strongest in magic. Among all the guardians, Demiurgos was the strongest in wisdom. Among all the guardians, Yerbade was the strongest in defense. A group of the strongest fighting force in Nazarik's underground tomb floated around Noah, surrounding Noah in the middle and standing against the wind. Era. Zaisha spoke in a somewhat pitiful voice. If you look at it from this perspective, humans are really like ants. There's something wrong with what you just said, Shadia. Yerbade smiled gently. No matter how you look at it, humans are just ants. However, even ants like these can still receive Lord Noah's mercy. Yon laughed. However, they don't understand this at all. Although it's a bit pitiful, Malay held his staff tightly and said timidly. But as expected, those who can't understand Lord Noah's kindness are all wrong. A human country. Cositas spat out white gas. It's a pity to destroy it after developing to this extent. The most pitiful thing is that mere humans dare to offend our sovereign. Demiurgos pushed up his glasses. No matter how prosperous the city is, it will turn into the dust of history at this moment. The other guardians nodded one after another. Their eyes were filled with coldness and killing intent as they looked down. Especially Zaisha. A bloody light flashed in her scarlet eyes. It was more terrifying than anything else. You dare to control me and make me betray Lord Noah and suffer such humiliation. Zaisha's cute face was twisted with rage. I'll never let you off. Noah's eyes flashed as he sensed the killing intent and evil aura surging from Zaisha's body. He said indifferently, all of you can leave first. After saying that, Noah did not give the guardians a chance to reply. He walked past them as though he was walking in the air and headed towards the capital of the Lien cult nation. As Noah walked step by step in the air towards the capital of the Lien cult nation as though he was walking on invisible ground, an almost inaudible commotion began to spread in the sky above the capital. If it were an ordinary person, they would definitely not be able to discover it, right? In the sky above the capital of the Lien cult nation, there were figures that could not be seen at all. They were the Lien cult nation soldiers who used both flight and invisibility spells. In this world, since there was a spell like flight, they naturally had to guard against attacks from the sky. These soldiers who used both flight and invisibility spells were precisely the troops that were specially prepared to guard against air attacks. Now, Noah's appearance naturally aroused the vigilance of these soldiers. Noah, who had a superb sensing ability, could clearly sense it. In the sky above the capital of the Seal cult nation, invisible auras were surrounding him. Feeling the aura surrounding him, Noah smiled slightly, but there was no smile in his eyes. As though he did not notice the invisible soldiers, Noah slowly walked in the air while closing his eyes. At this moment, in Noah's heart, a stone plate with 10 patterns on its outlines suddenly trembled. On it, a pattern flashed. It had been more than a month since he came to this world. In such a situation where he had not experienced it for a long time, the familiar power turned into a scorching torrent and roared in Noah's body. Bang! An astonishing divine power surged from Noah's body. Chapter 1248. At this moment, the energy source in Noah's body had been transformed into divine power, causing the surging divine power to surge out from his body like a raging wave, turning into a substantial golden airwave that spread out in all directions. The substantial golden airwave was like a shock wave that could be seen with the naked eye. It spread out in an extremely violent manner towards the surroundings. Suddenly, not far away, the guardians of the underground tomb in Nassarik were all caught off guard by the sudden violent shock wave, and all of them turned pale with fright. Almost subconsciously, the guardians raised their hands and blocked in front of them, as though they were walking in a storm, maintaining their figures with great difficulty. As for the soldiers of the Seal cult who were surrounding Noah, they could not even put up the slightest bit of resistance. They could not even react in time, and all of them were shocked by the sudden violent shock wave. Boom! Accompanied by a muffled explosion, the soldiers of the Seal cult who had used the invisibility spell to hide their figures were shaken to the point of revealing their figures. Amidst a series of screams, they were sent flying in all directions. Hence, the golden airwave that was like a shockwave wreaked havoc in the sky above the Seal cult like a storm, instantly attracting the attention of the people of the Seal cult. As the center of the golden airwave storm, Noah, whose robes were fluttering in the wind, naturally became extremely conspicuous. That. Who is that? What is that? A golden storm. What's going on? Did something happen? The entire capital of the Seal cult was suddenly thrown into chaos. Under such circumstances, in the center of the capital below, from a huge building that looked like a palace, a dense crowd of soldiers began to surge out. Among them, there were even many magic chanters who were dressed as priests and had activated the flight spell, flying directly towards the sky. Standing in the center of the golden storm, Noah looked down at the dense crowd of Seal cult soldiers and magic chanters who were flying towards him like a swarm of locusts. His eyes were as calm as an ancient well. In his heart, the pattern that lit up bloomed with a dazzling light. I will use these words to provoke the gods above, to use this magic, to chant this incantation, to make everything in the world bow and kneel. The voice of the incarnation named priest reverberated in everyone's heart, and the light fluctuation spread throughout the world. Then, Noah spoke. Get down. 2 simple words, yet it caused the violent surging golden airwaves to transform into a tide, rippling outwards and instantly enveloping the entire capital of the Seal theocracy. Then, the densely packed Seal cult soldiers and magic chanters that were swarming towards Noah like a swarm of locusts froze in midair. Immediately afterwards, as if they were suppressed by an invisible force, the soldiers and magic chanters fell to the ground at a speed faster than when they came, and wailed in pain as they hit the ground. At this moment, the entire Seal cult was in a panic. No matter how stupid they were, they all realized it. The man who was floating in mid-air and turned into the center of the golden storm was definitely not someone who could be taken down easily. At this moment, in the capital of the Seal cult, every one of those who had the ability to be called a powerhouse had an ominous premonition. Their instincts told them. Today, the Seal cult was going to suffer a terrible disaster. Such instincts turned into reality in the next second. I am the conqueror who can defeat 1,000 with 100, 10,000 with 1,000, and 10,000 with 10,000. Now, for me who is on the side of justice, please shine brightly and bestow me with divine power. The brand new voice turned into a sound wave, rippling across the entire Lien cult. Following the rumbling sound, the originally clear sky above the Lien cult nation was suddenly filled with dark clouds. Like a whirlpool, the clouds surged and swirled in the sky above the entire city. Rumble. In the next second, streaks of lightning and thunder suddenly exploded from the pitch-black clouds in the sky, bringing along an extremely oppressive and terrifying pressure, causing the entire Lien cult nation to fall into a state of panic. Many of the powerhouses and higher-ups of the Lien cult looked at the raging winds, dark clouds, lightning flashing, and thunder rumbling in the sky in horror. Their bodies started to tremble. Under such a sky, Noah was like a god, looking down at the capital of the Lien cult with the dark clouds in the background as he spun crazily like a whirlpool. In that pair of dark and deep eyes, there was no pity at all. In order to kill Gudjifu, the Lien cult was willing to use an entire innocent village as a sacrifice and wantonly slaughter. In order to achieve their goal, this cult that worshipped the supremacy of humans and advocated for the elimination of other races did not hesitate to disregard good and evil, treating all races other than humans as targets for slaughter. In this cult, demi-humans like the forest elves, half-elves, and dark elves were all sold as slaves. Such racial discrimination was just repeating what the other races did to humans. In Noah's eyes, it was not worthy of worship at all. In addition to the matter of Zaisha, the difference in ideology, as well as the new enmity and old hatred, this outcome had long been predestined. Repent in the midst of destruction, leaving behind this sentence that disappeared with the wind. Noah raised one hand. Rumble. In the sky, in the dark clouds that spun crazily like a whirlpool, all the lightning flashed and thunder rumbled at this moment, turning into violent thunderbolts. Amidst the wailing of the atmosphere, the thunderbolts covered the entire sky and shrouded the capital of the Lien cult below. This was the sound of the thunderbolts descending from the sky, instantly destroying buildings. This was the sound of countless broken bricks and rubble being sent flying by the impact of the thunderbolts descending from the sky. Dong! This was the sound of houses and buildings collapsing. Kacha kacha kacha! This was the sound of the ground cracking inch by inch under the devastation of the violent thunderbolts. In an instant, the entire capital of the Lien cult was shrouded in the violent thunderbolts descending from the sky. Under the bombardment of the thunderbolts, it gradually turned into dust. Oh my God! God! The end of the world! The end of the world is here. God! Please save us! Save us! Under the devastation of the violent thunderbolts, the people who were fleeing in fear one by one sent out the most important prayer of their lives to the 6 gods that they believed in. What they received was the thunderbolts descending from the sky once again, destroying the buildings in the capital one by one. Rumble. The city walls around the capital finally collapsed under the bombardment of the violent lightning. In the capital of the Lien cult, the people could only flee for their lives, letting their screams and wails resound through the entire space. That scene was like hell. Not far away, the guardians of Nazarik's underground graveyard looked at Noah, who stood in the wind like a god above the capital. With a raise of his hand, he could change the color of the sky and earth, causing violent lightning to descend, and causing a bustling city to gradually turn into ruins. Intense shock surged in their hearts. Looking at the people in the city below who could only flee for their lives in hellish despair, even the guardians of the great underground tomb in Nasarik couldn't help but turn pale. Under such a power of heaven and earth, every guardian recognized their own helplessness. Even these people who were at the maximum level of 100 could only feel powerless, let alone the people in the city below who could only tremble and wail under such power. However, if someone were to observe carefully, they would notice. Even though the entire city was shrouded in the dark clouds of lightning and thunder and was being ravaged by the violent thunderbolts descending from the sky, none of the ordinary people were harmed. After all, to the ordinary people, the actions and decisions of the upper echelons of the Sealian cult had nothing to do with them. Noah's goal was not to massacre without regard for anything, but to punish the culprits. Chapter 1249. Nasaric Underground Tomb, Surface Graveyard. Wang. Thick darkness suddenly emerged from the space in the center of the tomb. It condensed together, turning into a door-like fog and stabilizing. It was the 10th grade spell, teleportation door, that had no distance restrictions and a 0 failure rate of teleportation. With Noah in the lead, a group of guardians of the Nasaric underground tomb slowly walked out of the black fog-like door and appeared on the surface graveyard of the Nasaric underground tomb. Apart from Noah, everyone else was in a daze. Clearly, they hadn't been able to react to the destructive power of heaven and earth just now. However, when they came to their senses, the guardians of the underground tomb in Nasaric looked at Noah with only admiration and pride left in their eyes. A person with such divine power was actually the supreme ruler of the Nasaric underground tomb. Who would not feel admiration and pride for the person whom the guardians were loyal to? Especially Yael Bede and Zatia, who looked at Noah with extremely strong love in their eyes. They were just short of confessing on the spot and asking for Noah's favor. On the contrary, the person who had just used the power of authority to turn the entire Sealian theocracy into ruins muttered thoughtfully as he walked forward as if nothing had happened. Those players haven't appeared yet. Ibra had said that the 6 gods of the Sealian theocracy were all players. However, those players had only arrived in this world a few hundred years ago. Even so, it wasn't impossible that the 6 great gods were still alive. In Yggdrasil, the races that players could choose from were roughly divided into 3 types: humans, subhumans, and mutants. The basic races of humans were humans, dwarves, forest elves, and so on. The basic races of subhumans were goblins, orcs, ogres, and so on. The basic races of mutants were skeletons, zombies, vampires, and so on. Including the high-grade races, there were more than 700 races in Yggdrasil. Since the 6 gods who had arrived a few hundred years ago had helped the humans establish a country where humans were supreme, then it was very likely that they were humans. Since they were humans, they should have all died after hundreds of years. However, if the 6 great gods were from some of the higher races of the human race or had a profession with a special lifespan setting, it was not impossible for them to still be alive. Besides, even if they didn't, since there were precious items in Nasaric's graveyard that could change one's race and class, there was a high possibility that the 6 gods also had the same item. That way, as long as they changed to long-lived races and ranks, the 6 great gods would be able to continue living. Because of this, Noah was prepared to fight the 6 great gods, but the 6 great gods did not appear. Does it really not exist anymore? Or did he hide when he saw that the situation was not good? Noah muttered thoughtfully. If I had known earlier, I would have delayed and not used my authority right away. That being said, even if the 6 great gods appeared, what could they do? In the hands of Noah, who could already use authority, even if there were tens of thousands of level 100 players, it would only take one move to destroy them. What Noah really cared about was the fact that these players had come to this world. 8 desires king. 6 great gods. Demon god. If these existences really came to this world when the 2 worlds connected, then why didn't Gaia and Alea discover it? Or did Gaia and Alea discover it but did not say anything? No. Gaia and Alea did not hide it from Noah. Then, did something unexpected happen? Noah sighed, then raised his head and looked at the sky. All right, I'll leave for a while. Noah's purpose in coming to this world was to prevent the existence of Nasaric's graveyard from affecting the current world. However, since this world had welcomed many players hundreds of years ago, and even allowed the magic, professions, and items in Yggdrasil to flourish in this world, then Noah's worries were unnecessary. After all, magic, professions, items, and other factors were prevalent in this world, causing the entire society to change qualitatively. If this world didn't have any negative effects, then no matter how much trouble Nazarik's underground tomb caused in this world, it shouldn't have any effect. In that case, Noah did not need to worry about whether the existence of Nazarik's graveyard would affect the world. Thus, Noah said to the guardians of Nazarik's graveyard without looking back, "Next, I'll leave this place for a while. I'll leave the rest of Nazarik's graveyard to you guys." Hearing this, the guardians of Nazarik's graveyard were startled at first, then they nodded one by one. "Understood," Yair Bade said in a formal tone. "We'll arrange for escorts." Obviously, the guardians thought that Noah intended to go to the capital of the kingdom or somewhere else like before. Little did they know that Noah intended to leave this world. Thus, Noah shook his head and said, "There's no need to arrange for escorts. There's no need to arrange guards. I'll be fine by myself." At this moment, the guardians of Nazarik's graveyard objected. "How can this be? How can Lord Noah not have any attendants by his side?" "Yes. That's right, it's not right to let the Supreme Venerable travel alone. Although we know that our power is too insignificant for Lord Noah, this power still has to be given to the Supreme Venerable that we are loyal to." Zaisha, Yair Bade, Meir, Kossitz, and Demiurgos all expressed their thoughts. "I think so too," Yair Bade also said. "No matter what, it's not right to let the Supreme Venerable travel alone. Even with Lord Noah's power, there's no one in this world who can compare to you." Chapter 1250. The next day, Noah didn't seem to have any intention of leaving and woke up naturally. Ashtar also acted as if nothing had happened and walked out of the bedroom hand in hand with Noah. "Are you leaving now?" Ashtar asked softly with his usual emotionless tone. "Aren't you going to say goodbye to others? Anyway, if I have the chance to come back next time, it's only been a month." Noah patted Ashtar's head. "Or, Ashtar, are you reluctant to leave this place?" "No." Ashtar shook his head without hesitation. "As long as I have a master, that's enough." "You." Noah laughed bitterly. At this time, there was a knock on the door and a voice came in. "Sorry to disturb, Lord Noah." "Yair Bade." Noah raised his eyes and looked in the direction of the door. "Come in." As soon as he finished speaking, the door was gently opened. Outside the door, Yair Bade and Demiurgos appeared at the same time and walked in. Seeing Yair Bade and Demiurgos, Ashtar, who was holding Noah's hand, raised his head slightly and glanced at Noah. After Noah nodded, he immediately closed his eyes and his body flickered with a brilliant light, turning into a burst of light particles and gathering in Noah's hand. After a while, the familiar silver dagger appeared in Noah's hand and was pinned back to his waist by Noah. At this time, Noah looked at Yair Bade and Demiurgos. "What's wrong? Is there a problem?" Demiurgos chose to remain silent. Only Yair Bade took a step forward and met Noah's gaze. "Is Lord Noah preparing to leave?" "That's right." Noah blinked. "What? You're still worried?" "No, since Lord Noah has already decided, we won't say anything else." Yair Bade shook his head and said this. "However, Supreme Venerable, please at least accept this." Following Yair Abed's words, Demiurgos walked past Yair Abed, took out a backpack, and respectfully presented it to Noah. "This is..." Noah took the bag and frowned slightly. "Unlimited backpack." Unlimited backpack. As the name suggested, it was a backpack with unlimited capacity. There was no space limit, but there was a weight limit. Using this backpack, as long as it did not exceed the weight limit of the backpack, no matter how big the object was, it could be stored inside. In other words, at first glance, this backpack was the size of a human head, but even if it couldn't compare to Noah's treasure vault or the treasure hall in Nazarik's underground tomb, it definitely wasn't as much as it looked. At the very least, it was enough to be used as a space the size of a warehouse. In Yggdrasil, this kind of backpack was often used to store consumables and recovery items such as scrolls and potions. Lord Noah, this unlimited backpack has been filled with props made by various crafting professions in Nazarik's underground tomb. Seeing Noah's puzzled expression, Demiurgos explained. Among them, there are short staffs, magic staffs, crystals, potions, and other consumable props. The head of scribe has also instructed the Supreme Venerable to use dragon skin to create the highest level magic scrolls and other magic props. I hope they can be of help to Lord Noah. Hearing this, Noah's frown deepened, and he looked straight at Demiurgos. I've brought most of the things I want. These are all prepared for the underground tomb in Nasarik. In the treasure hall of the underground tomb in Nasarik, Noah had done a large search and collected all kinds of treasures that were useful to him. In the library on the 10th floor underground, Noah had also searched through all kinds of extremely precious summoning books, item books, magic books, and information books. In terms of gains, Noah had already obtained a lot. Noah definitely had a lot of the props that Demiurgos had prepared in his treasure hole. Since that was the case, there was no reason not to leave these props for the underground tomb in Nasarik. After all, the underground tomb in Nasarik also required the use of all kinds of magic props. Lord Noah, please don't worry. Yair Bedard smiled slightly. Because of the large amount of resources provided by Lord Noah, the various magic props made in Nasarik have exceeded our initial expectations. This has allowed the treasure hall to be fully replenished. These are all part of what we think will be leftovers after careful calculations. Therefore, Lord Noah doesn't have to worry about the lack of props in the underground tomb in Nasarik, Demiurgos also said warmly. If these things can help Lord Noah, then it's really the best thing for us. Noah was suddenly speechless. After a while, Noah tightened the infinity backpack in his hand and smiled helplessly at Yair Bedard and Demiurgos. If that's the case, I'll accept your kindness. Only then did Jabez and Demiurgos smile. What? When Noah returned to the world between and explained the matter of the players to Gaia and Aleia, the two restraints let out surprised sounds. That's impossible, Gaia said in surprise. At that time, when we intercepted the data of that game, undoubtedly, there was only one player. There were no other players. But, it's impossible for Noah to lie about such things, Aleia was the first to calm down and said calmly. It seems that the situation of the two worlds that were connected is much deeper than we thought. What situation? Noah asked in confusion. Do you have any clues about this situation? Well, I don't know if this counts as a clue, Gaia said. Little Noah, you also know about the existence of compatibility, right? According to our judgment, the compatibility of the two worlds that were connected seems to be very high, Aleia directly explained. Therefore, it's very likely that when the world between was in turmoil, the two worlds were also connected, and it seems like it happened more than once. If that was the case, then it was true. Before Noah came to the world between for the first time, many worlds had been destroyed and became broken feather-like existences. That proved that before that, there had been more than one large-scale upheaval in this between worlds, leading to the destruction of a large number of worlds. Because of the high compatibility, when the world between was in turmoil, the two worlds were also connected, which led to the players that we didn't know about being transferred to the other world. Gaia's tone was somewhat helpless. As expected, if it's not a world of one's own, even if one can obtain the help of the other world, one wouldn't be able to control the situation at any time. At the end of the day, we are only the restraining force of one world. It is impossible for us to interfere with other worlds. If it wasn't for the fact that the two worlds didn't reject our interference and even provided us with assistance, we wouldn't have been able to stop that player, Alea said. Originally, we were worried that the connection between the worlds would have an unnecessary effect on the existence of the world between, which was why we interfered. Now, it seems that the compatibility of the two worlds is high enough to accommodate each other. Since so many players did whatever they wanted in that world and didn't cause any negative effects, our interference is unnecessary. In other words, we won't care about it anymore. Gaia's tone became lighter. That's great. Taking care of our own world is already troublesome enough. If we also have to take care of other worlds, it would be too tiring. No matter what, it's been hard on you, Alea said to Noah. Leave the rest to us. You can continue to collect world fragments in other worlds and increase your strength. Alea's words made Noah fall into silence. Noah sighed and suddenly opened his mouth. Should I improve my strength? Then, to what extent do I need to increase my strength? This time, it was Gaia and Alea's turn to fall into silence. I know, to deal with an opponent that has the ability to bring chaos to the world between, I have to become stronger. Noah couldn't help but speak his mind. But, is my current strength still not enough? Since he obtained the power called authority in the world of God Slayer and completed the great cause of killing God, except for Orpheus of Demon High School, Noah has never encountered a decent opponent. Now, with LV4 and the ability value of the SSS stage, Noah has no problem even if he uses 2 of the authority of the 10 avatars for a long time. Even if he goes all out, it is possible to use 3 avatars. Even so, is Noah's strength still not enough? Little Noah, don't worry. Gaia smiled bitterly. You will understand the real purpose of increasing your strength in the future. The real purpose of increasing my strength? Noah was slightly stunned. What does this mean? It's still the same sentence, you will understand sooner or later, Alea said faintly. So, you just focus on increasing your strength, that's enough. Hearing this, Noah could only nod helplessly. Looking at the pieces of feathers that were wandering around, Noah didn't know how long it took, but he made up his mind and said, in that case, help me choose a world with a higher level of strength. Chapter 1251. Whoosh. This was a somewhat hurried whistling sound of the wind. When Noah once again experienced the feeling of entering a brand new world, the sound of the wind immediately drilled into Noah's ears. Some of the fierce wind was like a wave hitting Noah's body, causing a trace of doubt to emerge in Noah's heart, who had not yet had the time to open his eyes. Such a strong wind, could it be that I descended to the cliff? This was Noah's first thought after arriving in this world. Then, when such a thought rose in Noah's heart, Noah felt it. He felt a sense of weightlessness. The feeling was as if the ground beneath his feet had suddenly disappeared. It was also as if he had been thrown high into the sky without any warning, causing Noah's entire body to float. The familiar feeling of weightlessness made Noah's heart surge with an ominous premonition. This feeling, could it be that I'm about to fall into the rhythm of some big bathhouse? Recalling the scene when he first arrived in the world of looking for a chance encounter in the underground city, Noah's face first turned green, and then he quickly opened his eyes. The moment he opened his eyes, Noah saw it. He saw a strange scenery that he had never seen before. In front of his sight was the horizon that spread out like a carpet. In the center of the horizon was a stunning cliff. In the middle of such a strange scenery, there was a city. It was a city shrouded in a huge curtain. It felt like there were many huge tents forming a huge camp, and the city was tightly surrounded by walls. This was the first scene that Noah saw after arriving in this world. Even when traveling between different worlds, he had never seen such a strange scene. Looking at the strange city in the center of the strange scenery below, Noah finally understood his situation. There was a fierce wind whistling around. The ground looked so far away. On the contrary, the sky that should have felt so far away seemed to be within reach, and the distance was surprisingly close. Coupled with the fact that there was no feeling of being on the ground at all, it told Noah that he was in the middle of the air. Moreover, he was very high up in the air. It was a long story, but the whole process, from Noah's feet losing support, to the feeling of weightlessness attacking Noah's body, to Noah opening his eyes and seeing the strange scenery in front of him, the whole process did not even take a second. So it's really like this. Therefore, Noah only had time to let out such an unbearable cry, and his whole body fell down. Oh! Wah! Ah! Almost at the same time, 3 voices containing completely different emotions went into Noah's ears at the same time. The emotion contained in the first voice was curiosity. The emotion in the second voice was surprise. The emotion in the third voice was calmness. The 3 different voices all sounded in Noah's ears, but none of them were panicked. It didn't sound like they were thrown high up in the air, doing free fall, and the strong wind pressure made their skin tingle. Although there were many things that needed to be investigated, Noah still recognized it. In addition to himself, there were 3 other people like Noah, falling from a height of at least 4,000 meters. As a result, it was Noah himself who had the most real panic. What the hell is going on? Not to mention Noah. In such a strange world, there were 3 other people falling from a high altitude with Noah. It was strange no matter how he thought about it. However, now was not the time to think about this. Feeling the increasingly strong wind pressure, looking at the ground getting closer and closer, Noah whispered softly. Flight, worn on Noah's neck, the wing-shaped necklace with the magic effect of flight flashed a burst of light. Then, Noah's body gradually offset the weightlessness and strong wind pressure. Like a feather, he was suspended in the air. However, Noah was the only one who could fly. For some reason, the 3 people who fell from a high altitude with Noah were like meteorites, brushing past Noah's side and continued to fall. For a moment, Noah saw the appearance of the 3 people. It was a combination of 1 man and 2 women. Without much time to think, Noah controlled his body, his whole body fell, and his feet stepped on the void. Dong! Accompanied by the sound of the air vibrating, Noah's body was like an arrow leaving the bow. With the speed of a gust of wind, he quickly swept to the falling combination of 1 man and 2 women. And when he swept to the side of the 3 people, Noah immediately stretched out his hands and hugged the 2 girls, 1 in each hand, to stop the falling trend. As for the remaining young man, he could only heavily fall into a lake on the ground under Noah's gaze. Pang! A huge splash followed the fall of a person from a high altitude and exploded. The 2 girls who were held in Noah's arms and avoided the fate of falling into the lake tilted their heads. They didn't understand the current situation, and even the reason why they could now float in the air was confused. Looking at the big splash and the 2 girls in his arms who tilted their heads with a puzzled face, but didn't panic and scream like ordinary people who fell from a high altitude, Noah raised his head, looked at the clear sky, and sighed. What kind of godly development is this? A minute later, on the shore of the lake, 4 people landed on the turf one after another. To be more precise, it should be said that Noah fell from the sky with a girl in each hand and landed lightly on the ground. And the unfortunate young man who fell into the lake climbed out of the lake and sat on the turf with his body wet. Until then, Noah saw the full appearance of the 3 people who fell from midair with him.